Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Moshe product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back. Today we're speaking with Sam Pavitt about the Backlog and Agile Board tool Clickup. Sam is the head of product at Gatekeeper. How you doing, Sam?
Hey, mate. Yeah, great. Very pleased to be here. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Hi, Matt, and hi, Sam. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Moshe. How are you?
Perfect. Yeah, Clickup is an interesting one because usually people are talking about Jira, and we're talking a lot about Azure DevOps in our kickoff session. But before we get into Clickup, tell us a bit about yourself, Sam.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the head of product at Gatekeeper, which is a contract and vendor management tool. I've been in product management for the past 15 years with startups, corporates, also agency side. And my passion is really about scaling agile teams and the tools and processes required to make those happen. So yeah, today we're talking about Clickup. I'm interested to hear about when you guys first heard of Clickup, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I heard it from Moshe, so I'm going to lean on him for that one.
Yeah, no, I think that I might have heard from you, Sam, that you were using it rather than Jira, and that you actually used Jira in the past. But I heard about Clickup before. I associated it more as a project management tool, rather than as a Jira replacement. Although, you know, people are thinking about Jira also maybe as a project management tool. I don't like to refer to it as a project management tool because to me, project management is very different from product management. And project management is more of like Gantt charts and, Microsoft Project or Primavera or products like that. So I know
it's interesting.
So I know these days, the lines are much more fuzzier about these things because more people, especially the younger generation, that's the only thing they know. They never knew what was project management, what was really Gantt chart and what was MS Project and other things. But I actually, in my career, I developed software for project management with MS Project and with Primavera. And it came from a very traditional manufacturing and industries, engineering.
Yeah, SharePoint and all those. But it's interesting. You should try to kind of pigeon box them like those, right? Because Clickup's strapline is one app to replace them all, and that's what they're trying to do. Unlike when we talk about Jira, and it's interesting, Moshe. I saw your poll. I checked in on it yesterday on LinkedIn, and when I last checked, it was like Jira was at least 50% of the votes.
Yes.
Then was it Pivotal?
Yes.
And then other.
Yes.
So when we think about product management, the go-to is Jira, isn't it? And as you mentioned, I was a kind of Jira admin in a previous life. And then funny story, actually, when I joined Gatekeeper a couple of years ago, I had all these grand plans to implement Jira and all the great processes I've done in the past. It was kind of a big tool in my armory, if you like. And when I joined, I mentioned this to a few people early on. It's like, of course, I'm going to implement Jira and these workflows and these automations. And they said, yeah, good luck with that. And I was like, okay, didn't think much of that. I thought, hey, I've done this 100 times before. I've done this for big teams, organizations of 1,000 staff, and it's not a problem. Maybe they think it's just too hard to implement. And I spoke to a few more people and they laughed again or sniggered. And then eventually someone had the balls to tell me, they're like, yeah, Patrick, our CEO absolutely hates Jira. So good luck with that. And I was like, okay.
There you go.
So it became like, I had to chuck, I felt like
back to the drawing board.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a case of like, choose your battles right early on. And so at the time, I can't take credit for implementing Clickup at Gatekeeper. It was already in place, but I had to decide pretty early on that all of my efforts had to go into learning Clickup and learning it to the same degree I knew Jira, because there's no chance I was going to implement Jira. And as it happened, as I chat to you about, Moshe, I ended up falling in love with it. It was like, oh my God, all of these things that were just so complex in Jira and made me this bottleneck where I was a Jira admin. It's just not the case with Clickup. It's so easy to use, so easy to implement. Anyone can configure it, and it was just a joy, to be honest.
And that's really interesting to hear. And yeah, that's where my first time that I heard about ClickUp was more from non-product people that were using it for their project management. And maybe that's why my association with it was not so much as a Jira replacement, but more as like a Trello.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and that is the case. I mean, we use ClickUp not just in the product team, but across the whole organization for various things. And that's one of the beauties of it, right? Is that you can mark dependencies or track tasks with other departments, which certainly in my experience of Jira or Azure or Pivotal or any of them is not normally the case. You know, people typically think of Jira as the kind of engineering tool of choice. And sure, you might give the business or the stakeholders like a basic Kanban board where they can view the status or whatever, and they have to log in there and work it out. But typically, there's an integration involved. Like you say, you know, someone in project management might be using SharePoint, or they might be using a Google Sheet or Trello. And at best, there's a complex integration. At worst, it's some poor bastard's job to log into Jira once a week and manually rekey all that information. Whereas in ClickUp, because it is, you know, one app to replace them all, as they say, and it does work for all departments, you know, you just don't have that issue.
Interesting. So tell us a bit. Let's go to the basics of ClickUp. What makes ClickUp so simple to use, and what do you like about it?
Yeah, I think it's probably the structure, the hierarchy, you know. So it's built on this concept of spaces, and then below spaces you have folders, below folders you have lists, and within lists you have the individual tasks themselves. And there's no workflows. I think that's probably one big observation that early on I couldn't get my head around. I was like, how on earth am I going to implement this complex SDLC we have with no workflows? It makes no sense. But once you get your head around that and you start using it in the way it's intended with some of by the way, it's by no means simple. We have around 15 automations running on our SDLC, but it doesn't require that administrator or that kind of global person that has all of the keys, has all of the knowledge to manage it. So I think really to answer your question, it's the absence of workflows that makes it such a breeze. And we do, you know, it's not to say we don't have specialists. So we do have like Paul, who's a product owner in our team, is our kind of go-to guy for ClickUp, but not because he's the only one who can do it. You know, any of us can pick up their work. It just so happens that he's a great process guy. Whereas in Jira, you know, you absolutely have those bottlenecks of knowledge. And by the way, if you search like LinkedIn, you're not going to find a ClickUp administrator in the same way as you do. Like people have made whole careers, right, out of being Jira administrators or Salesforce administrators.
Right.
And for me, that's always a red flag. You know, if you have to implement a tool that requires that, and typically when you start talking about big organizations of 1,000+ people, you can get to the point where you've got several instances of Jira, they're integrated into a big ERP. Before you know it, you're looking at a $6-7 figure just to get an agency on site to manage all this stuff for you, right?
Right. But if you don't have the workflow, how does it work? What replaces that, or I'm trying to visualize it and
yeah, no, you're at the same place I was early on, and it's a great question. And by the way, you know, I'm in no way affiliated with ClickUp, and I still think Jira is a fantastic tool. I just think it's very much overutilized. You know, in big organizations, previous organization I was at, a very large travel org with several business units, over 1,000 individuals. You know, they would struggle with ClickUp because they had such strict policies and procedures. The SDLC was very, very strict. We were audited. It was, you know, everything had to be so, and we had a lot of junior engineers as well. So, you know, you wanted to prevent anyone from making mistakes or getting code into production that wasn't supposed to be there. Gatekeeper is a very high trust environment, you know, very senior engineers. And so the workflow just isn't needed. You know, if you think about Jira and the way statuses work. So when you're in a workflow in Jira, right, it's been a while. I'm casting my memory back. It's been a couple of years since I've used it. You're in a workflow, you're in a status, and you just click the next. You can either drop down and change the status, providing the workflow allows you to do that, or you just hit the next button, right? And it takes you on to the next natural progression. You're in development, all's good, you raise PR, whatever. And you do that exact same thing in ClickUp. You just don't have that workflow to govern those steps. You can move a task wherever you want. And that's the beauty of it. You can do whatever you want with it. You don't, in Jira, I remember being infuriated, constantly coming up against these modals, these error modals. Sorry, you can't do that. You know, brick wall after brick wall after brick wall, and eventually you work out why it is, because the workflow is insisting you do things in a certain way. And there's definitely a use case for that. As I said, in big organizations, it's almost needed. But I certainly think it's overutilized. I would say, let's just make it real simple for the listeners, right? Unless your ARR is at 100 million plus, Jira shouldn't be the default. Don't just automatically go to it. Look at what else is out there.
So that's a good point about, and we've seen it in the past about different tools that they don't always fit everyone.
Yeah.
And really, as product people, we should always talk about product market fit. So what do you see the market for Clickup? You mentioned 100 million ARR, but is there any other team size or the maturity of the team or things like that?
Yeah, I would say definitely they're big in the SME space, because of their strapline, one app to replace them all, which is obviously an incredibly ambitious feat they're going after. And early days, I had my doubts. I was like, how on earth are they going to cater to all these teams? They have webinars for all these different use cases, like Clickup for accounts, Clickup for sales, Clickup for customer success. Product's just one of the things in engineering that they focus on. So it's hard to answer your question. I don't, it's probably best speaking to someone from Clickup to answer that. But they're not slowing down. These guys have got 500 million funding now, which brings me on to the kind of next point of when you're choosing one of these tools is how often are they shipping new features, right? With Clickup, they ship every single week. Every week, every Friday, you get an update of what's new in the platform. And, there are things that are missing. We've requested several things on the ideas forum there. And it doesn't take too long because the sheer traction they've got with the amount of stuff they're shipping to see new things coming into fruition all the time. So, I'm not sure what the release cadence is like at Jira or at Azure these days, but it was certainly never weekly when I was using their tools.
Cool. Now, can you talk a bit about the backlog? Because the backlog is, one of those core things that product managers need to manage. And how is that in their concepts? How does it work? And how do you manage that? Because many people manage backlogs, even on the same tools, they manage them differently. So,
yeah, sure. We're pretty strict with our backlogs. So I talked earlier about the kind of structure of Clickup, right? So as a reminder, you have spaces. Think of spaces like teams, right? They can be what you want them to be, but we use them as teams. So let's say we have the engineering team space. And within that, we have folders. And within folders, we have lists. Now, we have a folder within our space called development. And within there, we have various different lists, right? And the lists are sprints. So if you think about Jira sprints, you can create a sprint cycle based on whatever cadence you're working to, 2 weekly, monthly, whatever that may be. And below those, you have the backlog. Well, it's exactly the same in Clickup. So we have, currently we have the list I'm looking at right now on my screen. We have the April sprint that's just completed and it's due to be deployed this coming week. We have the May sprint that is in flight. And then we have the June sprint that we're now planning. And then below those, we have a backlog. And in terms of managing the backlog, to answer your question, we don't have anything on our backlog that isn't estimated. So we gather as a group every Friday. Any new tasks that have been raised across the business, we get together as a team. We talk about them, go through the user stories and the acceptance criteria, and we put an estimate on them. And we decide there where they go. Are they worthy of going into a current sprint or an upcoming sprint? Do they go to the backlog, or do we just close them? Do we say, no, we're not going to do this, too many other priorities on? And so in terms of that, it works exactly the same way in Jira. You put them where you want to put them, and from the backlog, we construct the sprints every sprint cycle.
And then the backlog that you manage that doesn't go into the sprints, how does that work? Do you have one big list, or there are multiple lists based on different initiatives? Or
no? So we have, good question. We have one big list. There's one list called a backlog, but within those lists, we have various tags on the different tasks. And so we have 3 different squads here at Gatekeeper. We have the core squad, i.e. the core application itself, integrations that look after all our native integrations and our API. And then we have our workflow squad as well. And so we use those tags to separate the different sprints that run throughout the same sprint cycle, but within the different within the different squads. So, when the product owner for each of those squads is building their backlog, grooming the backlog and then building their upcoming sprints, they can simply apply filters. Say, show me only tasks that are in my sprint. So tags, essentially, I think is what we're getting at here. It's all about tags. They can have any number of custom fields within Clickup. So we spin them up as we need them. We have a type tag similar to Jira. Is it a new feature? Is it a chore? Is it a bug? We have the squad tag that I just talked about. And you can get to any view you want very, very quickly by using those tags and filtering in that way, which is another bonus, really. Like, one of the things I missed early on about Jira was, not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but like when you're querying or looking for a task, I used to like in Jira as a power user, I think they call it JQL. It's essentially SQL, right?
Right.
Yeah, but it's like a flavor, a Jira flavor of SQL.
Yes.
I'm no SQL expert, but I know my way around. I can write basic queries that I need to, and I used to enjoy that, but it used to infuriate everyone else, right? And again, I become the gatekeeper. So I'm the gatekeeper here of Jira, and you just become the bottleneck. And I think people, they enjoy that. I often see that people are the gatekeeper of a certain tool, and they think it's a great thing, and it's not. You think about it, you're just a slave to everyone else. You just. I had this scenario in Jira, and I'm sure this will resonate with others, where literally people were raising Jira tasks for me to change something in Jira. Right, like the irony of that. Nothing says it's a bad tool than having to see that. And Jira isn't a bad tool. As I said earlier, it's a fantastic tool in the right use case. But certainly, a lot of smaller organisations are using it and enforcing the strict and infuriating workflows on their users when they simply don't need to.
Yeah, and I enjoyed using the JQL in Jira, and now I work in DevOps now, Azure DevOps, where they have queries. So I do like the ability to customize my boards, customize my backlog, so I can view what's most important to me and my team. So does it have that kind of capability when you are tagging different tickets and identifying different objects to?
Yeah, it's just all Boolean. Like, you don't need to write the SQL. I'm sure it's SQL firing away in the background, but it's very quick to get to any view you want to do.
Okay.
So you go into one of the lists we talk about, and you can say, hey, show me everything assigned to me in the workflow squad, whatever, that's 5 story points or above, or that's high priority or higher, whatever it is you want to query, and you just build it up with Boolean searches real quickly using their filters. So it's exactly the same, but back to my earlier point, anyone can do it. You don't need these admins, you don't need to know SQL, you don't need, so as you say, Matt, you enjoy those features as I did, but your peers and your stakeholders who don't know SQL may not feel the same way.
Right. Great point. Another point I do enjoy is the integration capability. So coming from Jira, I really enjoyed using Loom to record sessions and have those go into my tickets, as well as a tool called UserSnap, where we actually recorded feedback and pushed those into tickets, and this became tickets. It looks like Clickup has a number of integrations. Are you utilizing those?
Yeah, we use a few, but nothing too advanced. So we have the most useful one is that we integrate it into User Voice, which is our ideas forum. So that fires in the background. We have it into Slack as well for notifications. We don't have it into our CRM. No real need. We have like a one-way inbound list of customer filters that go into there, so we can tag any customers from our CRM. But it's very basic on that front. But no, that you're right. They do have a whole host of integrations in there. And also their own, they call their own kind of internal app integrations, if you like. They call them click apps, which is pretty cool because you can turn functionality on or off depending on whether you need it or not. You don't need to clutter your UI. So there's a whole host of click apps, from things like time tracking, whether you use story points or you don't. All these various things. Loom, like a native Loom integration, as mentioned. Google Docs is another one we use, just to in the description if we need more detailed product documentation or acceptance criteria, rather than having to write it in the body of the task itself. We can just embed a Google Doc and it will kind of unfurl that and show you the high level details of it in the card itself.
Or use Google Doc as your Confluence instead of using Confluence.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, anyone who uses Jira, right? Confluence is just the default. ClickUp have done this. They do have ClickUp Docs that they're pushing quite hard. We don't use it just because we're a Google house and we have everything on Docs and Sheets. but I know people that do use it, and it's pretty good for product documentation. And it's just for us personally, since the rest of the business all use Google Docs, if we had these docs isolated in ClickUp, it wouldn't make much sense. So we just we use the Google Docs integration.
Yeah, so they do seem to have a lot of like they're claiming, the one app to replace them all. A lot of different modules or products, maybe, like even whiteboards and chat and things like that, templates for different things. So it does seems to be, and maybe that's why so many people love it. I've heard a lot of great things about it. So
yeah, it took me a while. I mean, I'm now a ClickUp verified user, and as I said, I threw myself heavily into it because I had no real choice. Like, I had every intention of implementing Jira, and one of my reasons for my role here at Gatekeeper was to come with my agile experience and background and implement all of these processes and scale the team kind of rapidly. Right, after a couple of years, I've now been here, and when you imagine doing that, and then someone says, you're not going to be able to install Jira, it was hard. So I actually put more effort early on into learning ClickUp than I did the Gatekeeper application itself, because there are many people in the organization that know our application, but there wasn't anyone with my background in kind of agile processes, and so it made sense for me to double down on that. But I did get the mick taken out of me for how hard I went after ClickUp. I was emailing the CEO and all sorts, and Patrick, our CEO, called me toenails, and I said, "Hey, why are you calling me toenails?" He said, "Because you're so far off ClickUp's arse, it's all we can see of you." which of course he was absolutely right, but it served me well, right? Because I've now got ClickUp to the level of knowledge that I have in Jira, and I often speak to lots of people about these things, or they ask my advice on what tool they should use. And as I said, Jira is an amazing tool, it really is, but as per your pod on LinkedIn, Moshe, I think it's everyone's default for, and it needs to stop being the case, certainly for smaller organizations.
For sure.
Yeah, we usually ask our guests also what is the learning curve to learn the product, and maybe in this case we'll have to ask what is the learning curve to unlearn, or the unlearning curve, what you learned before from Jira, or because it has a different concepts, but you can still do maybe in different ways, but you can still achieve the work that you need to achieve.
Yeah, really great question. So the learning curve is relatively easy. I would say if you're not a Jira admin, or you haven't implemented Jira for very large teams before, the learning curve would definitely be easier, because, as you say, I had to unlearn a lot of stuff. I'm like, where the hell are the workflows? How do I do this? How do I enforce this? And the point with ClickUp is that you don't enforce anything. It's definitely more for high trust teams. If you work in a high trust team and people can be trusted to do the right things and choose the right statuses, then it's absolutely amazing. And when you get your head around that, it becomes very, very simple. They use a lot of color. It's a very colorful app, which is a great thing for muscle memory. I know now when I'm tagging customers, let's say in a certain task, I know that a certain customer is a certain color because I do it all day, every day. It becomes a very intuitive app. But they have a really great knowledge base. So I've passed all their knowledge base or academy, they call it, the ClickUp Academy courses, which is like a learning management system they have on the platform, totally free. And once you pass all of those, you become a kind of verified user, then a power user, and all the rest of it. And really great learning curve just to go through those. And again, if you went on the same journey with Jira, or even worse, Salesforce, right? Salesforce has like these trailheads that you complete one trailhead that might take you a week, and you've learned 0.4% of the application, right? It's just overwhelming how big that application is.
Yeah.
And so, by comparison, I would say the learning curve for ClickUp is very much shallower and much easier to achieve.
Yeah. What about the boards? Do they have abilities to do like a Scrum board versus a Kanban board, or is it just Kanban boards?
Yeah, this is another great thing about the way it's structured, because it's not structured in the same way as Jira. You can spin up any view you want. And it never tells you no. So there's a number of views that you can have. So you can have your standard list view, you can have a board view, you can have a calendar view, Gantt timeline, just looking down the list here, box, table, mind map, any of these views you can spin up from the same list, right? So again, we talked about spaces. Within spaces, you have lists. Folders. Within folders, you have lists. Any list that you go into, you can spin up whatever view you want or multiple views you want. So within our sprint, the default sprint view is your typical Kanban view. We run Scrum here at Gatekeeper, but we also have a list view. And we also have some filtered saved list views. It's like, oh, show me only the workflow squad's work, or show me a Gantt timeline of this sprint and when we're going to deploy, right? And you can spin all those views up from exactly the same list. And it never tells you no, it just lets you do it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Cool. Now we usually ask our guests also to tell us the 3 best features they love in the product, and then the 3 worst features that they would like the company to fix. So first, let's start with the best features.
Yeah, so the best features, well, not feature per se, but it's got to be, like I've talked about all along, the ease of administration. The fact that you don't need to be an absolute mastermind in the tool to administer it. Anyone can administer it. Everything makes sense. It's considerably easier to configure than a lot of the other tools out there. Second, I would say is, again, not a feature, but it's like, who is the tool for? I've found a huge benefit in Clickup that the whole organization can use it. And even if they don't use it for their own team, right? Let's say our marketing team, they all have a login and they all use the login. I used to look in Jira in a previous organization and see, people have logins and they haven't logged in for like 3 years or something, right? Because they just find it hard work or they don't know what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. So with Clickup, that one app to replace them all does ring true in this sense that, we use it across the organization, which is a big win over something like Azure or Jira, where it's typically just the engineering team that are in there. Mm-hmm. And then the third one, again, not a feature, but like just the sheer number of features, like the product updates. So the fact that they are shipping weekly, every week, new things are being shipped. There's things that are on your waiting list, or I wish it did this, or I wish they added this. And you usually don't have to wait too long for those things to come along.
Perfect.
Now the bad news.
Yeah, the bad news. Actually, they've sweet to kind of resonate with my last point. They've sweeped up on a few of these, because if you asked me that question 6 months ago, there were quite a few niggles that I had for the application. They've definitely mopped up a few of those. One they've mopped up very recently, I only discovered it a couple of days ago actually, but it had been driving me mad, is it's quite a boring one, but imagine you're doing your retrospective and you're looking at your burn down chart, and in Jira, from memory, when you release or you remove rather a number of stories from a sprint, it will show you that clearly in the burn down chart, right? Let's say you start the sprint with 200 story points, you're clearly over capacity, as we all like to do as product managers, ambitious start, and you remove 30 story points, right? I want to see that reflected in the burn down chart. I want to be able to, report back to stakeholders and say, hey, we failed, we added too much, here's what we did. Until very recently, Clickup didn't allow you to do that. And so the reporting was a real issue for us running Agile. And again, one app to replace them all. Engineering isn't their sole focus. So whilst they have a concept of sprints and story points, to me, they really haven't thought this through to the same degree as Jira. Jira being as structured as it is, everything is, reporting is great, right? Because it all hinders off those fixed, harsh sprints that you can't alter without it popping up in your face. This is going to alter the sprint. But then the reports were perfect. Whereas in Clickup, what happened was, in that scenario, we start a sprint with 200 story points. We release 30 from it. We make a decision as a management team to release them. What happened is the burn down just re-indexed. It didn't start at 200 and then show the kind of harsh drop on the day of 30. It just re-indexed the axis. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you couldn't see the decisions you'd made. So yeah, as I said, a boring one, but as a result, we didn't and haven't been running like strict retrospectives because we just hadn't had the insight to be able to do it without exporting it into Excel and all the rest of it. So that would be the number one. As I said, they have shipped that now. I've seen in the dashboards there's a toggle that basically says like re-index or don't re-index. So I'm yet to give it a try, but I hold every hope that will solve that problem. Mm-hmm. The next biggest one I would probably say is performance. They're scaling very, very fast. I don't know what their growth rate is like in terms of users now, or ARR for that matter. I know they hit 100 million ARR like last year, was it? I might be wrong. Anyone from Clickup listening might shoot me down here, but in any case, they're scaling very, very fast. and we've had a few instances where the app has just started running slow for no apparent reason. And they're always honest about it. Like, we reach out to support. That's one thing. They don't ever say, "Oh, it must just be a you issue," or "Have you checked your internet connection?" They always like, "Hey, yeah, heads up, we had an issue in our Virginia West instance on AWS or whatever, should be resolved now." So they've always been short-lived, but there's definitely been several instances where Slack's gone on fire and everyone said, "Is ClickUp down? Is ClickUp down for you? You experience speed issues." So I think that's just a scaling issue for them that you're going to see when you're growing at this speed. And then the final one I'm thinking now would probably be like RBAC, like role-based controls. As I said, we have a very high trust environment here at Gatekeeper, but in the Jira days, I used to be able to lock down individual users' permissions to only see certain boards and only see certain fields to that level. ClickUp does do that. Don't get me wrong; they have you can make certain lists private and others not, but it certainly isn't the same degree of granularity as Jira.
Excellent. You mentioned that you had gotten decent feedback when the system does slow down. What is your experience with the actual ClickUp representatives?
Yeah, they all seem really highly motivated. You raise a support ticket, you normally get a response within a few hours, depending on kind of when you submit the ticket. But I spoke to several of them, even the CEO on LinkedIn, with various issues. They're all, it's a very infectious company. I don't know if you've seen any of their marketing, but they go aggressively after their competitors with some real funny, tongue-in-cheek videos that they put out. Hilarious, some of them, and they're not afraid to kind of be front and center and be seen and be seen to be different. And I would say the customer support is very similar. It's not some you don't just get a ticket back that says an agent will respond to you shortly. It's very personal, very very personal. They'll jump on a call with you. They'll send you a Loom. They'll ask you to send them a Loom back. You can connect with them on LinkedIn. I'm connected with several of them. So very personal company. They really wrap their arms around you. And it's not just like this cold, faceless CS department.
That's great for you because it helps you with your problem. And that's great for them because as they scale as a company, they're going to retain users like yourself and Gatekeeper as a customer. So that's really good to hear.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we've had, as I talked through these 3 issues we've had, they're slowly going away with the cadence of their product updates. But there's been a point where it's a good point you should ask about the customer success, because there's definitely been points where I have been frustrated with the tool, mainly the boring burn down chart question. I was like, how the hell am I going to run retrospectives with this data, right? Had the customer success team not been so great, or, you don't get that personal level of touch, I wouldn't go as far as to say we would consider migrating away, but, it definitely wouldn't have been such an evangelist for the product as we are. So it just goes to show the value of a good CS team.
I also wanted to point out that they have a lot of good documentation on their site around learning, templates, stuff to help you get started. So if you are new to ClickUp, it does seem like there are some good things in here that can help you get up and running. And also their pricing is structured as a per member per month setup. So, but there is a free plan. So you can get up and starting as a personal account, or if you're in a small team before you want to scale, it does have good pricing options.
Yeah, free plans always make me want to try.
Yeah.
And then I'm signing up and then I don't have time to try it.
Yes.
But I'm intrigued.
Yeah. It gets you in the door. And I do like that. It at least it gets you up and running to explore it. So
yeah, that kind of freemium product-led growth model is all the rage now, isn't it? Some people pull it off better than others, but give it a go. ClickUp's certainly one of the better ones.
But I'm definitely intrigued to check it out because it does seem like an interesting one. Even though I do see the word Gantt chart in there, but I will ignore it. So,
well, this has been great, Sam. Thank you so much again for coming on the show.
Where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. Just look me up on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to connect with me. I try to put out good content on there on a regular basis. So hit me up on LinkedIn. And thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Big fan of the show and love your work.
Thank you. We really appreciate to hear that. Yeah, thank you again for coming to the show and telling us all about ClickUp.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Moshe. Thanks to all the listeners. Really appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.